Mark Feinsand, of course, the author of the franchise, this Yankee book that's flying off bookshelves all over America, which is good to see. And he's going to have to put a chapter in there on the Yankee Astros. He's got lots of stuff on Yankees, Kansas City from the mid-'70s, early '80s. Maybe Yankees and Astros are next. Mark, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us here. And the Astros, got the Yankees number a little bit. I mean, listen, somebody had to win the 3 out of 5, and it was Houston. I just like the way Houston did it better in that stretch of games here. They never trailed, never came up in the 9th inning or a cat in a bat where they trailed. They pitched a no-hitter. If their bullpen was a little better, they could have won all 5. I thought the Astros gave the Yankees something to think about in those 5 games, 2 to still be played in Houston, but to give the Yankees something to think about in those 5 aforementioned games. Let's discuss that first. Go ahead.
I agree with you, Chris. I think, when you're having a season like the Yankees are having, it's good to have a couple of roadblocks along the way. It's good for it not to just be smooth sailing, and then you get to October and just think, oh, well, we're just going to roll through this like we've rolled through everything else this season. If they are in a collision course for the postseason, for an ALCS matchup, they're going to remember those 5 games. They're going to remember that no-hitter, and they're going to think about that. And I think gives them a little bit, maybe a little bit of a chip on their shoulder that otherwise during this flawless season, they really haven't had to have.
Yeah, 100%, and they still can be a little susceptible with the strikeout and their offense. And their starting pitching has fallen off just a touch recently. Tyone hasn't been as good. Cortez has been a little bit more vulnerable. Their starting pitch, we all know about Cole and probably even Severino, but the other couple of starters not been quite as good. And, of course, their offense can still be a little too much home run heavy. What's your take on both those points? Let me hear.
Well, I think we knew that the pitching was going to come back to earth a little bit at some point. They weren't going to have a 2.6 ERA in that rotation for the entire season in the American League. So you knew that was going to happen, but they're still pitching well enough. It wouldn't surprise me if Brian Cashman looks at another starter, just because, as he always says, you can't have enough pitching. I know everybody says that. And one injury, and all of a sudden the Yankees rotation will have a hole in it. So wouldn't surprise me if he looks around there. As for the strikeouts, that's the kind of team they are. The other spot that it wouldn't surprise me if they go after is a corner outfielder to replace Gallo. If you replace those strikeouts and that 170 batting average with a guy who makes contact more, puts the ball in play, and isn't so susceptible to the strikeout, that would probably help the bottom of that lineup as well.
100%. Do you think the Mets, the Braves are coming. They have 25-7 last 32 games. I know the Mets have not been quite as good lately. They've lost 8 of 14. Scherzer outstanding, though, most important. Do you think the Mets, when they get down to nitty-gritty time in this National League East, you have confidence in the Mets' constitution to hold off the Braves? What's your take on that?
I do, Chris, and I think it all starts with Buck Showalter. We've been talking about him all year as being the guy who's sort of built to handle a team in New York, keep them focused on the task at hand. And remember, this last month, as the Braves have been red hot, the Mets have been without Scherzer. They still haven't seen DeGrom this year. He looks great in his first rehab start. He's going to make another one. So the idea that he's coming down the pike should really energize this team. Getting Scherzer and DeGrom back in that rotation is invaluable. And I think if the Mets can hold on to this lead, get DeGrom back, Scherzer's back already, and then I do think there's a tweak or two to be made at the deadline. This team is going to be in good shape to go towards the postseason.
All right, so you think they will hold off Atlanta. Atlanta might get Soroka back, which would be a big plus for them, too. Let's not forget that. But I generally agree with you on that 100%. The National League is weird because, the Dodgers, although they got a 7-game lead right now, I still think there might be a little something missing. But you also know the Dodgers will be very active at the deadline. Maybe add a pitcher. They get Buehler back maybe by September 1st. What's your take on a team that is 21 games over 500? You don't think there's a problem, but they haven't really played great. What's your take on LA right now in the NL West?
Agreed. I think with the injuries in the bullpen, the injury to Buehler, now an injury, Chris Taylor, they've got some issues. But like you said, Andrew Friedman's always going to be active at the deadline. Would not surprise me to see him go out and add a Luis Castillo, maybe add an outfielder. They were dealing with the absence of Betts for a while. I think Andrew Friedman is an aggressive guy. He understands that these years are going to run out at some point in terms of this group and a window. I think he'll do what's necessary. But like you said, they are 21 over, having not played the Christmas baseball So I think they look at their team and think that if they can patch up a few holes and get a little healthier, that they'll be in good shape as well.
Do you think the Pirates and the Orioles, Mark, I did that in the brushback today. Do you think those two franchises, finally, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel in Pirates and Baltimore? What's your take on that?
I think so. I mean, you look at them, they're both sort of in that, sort of not really contender range, but they're not looking at the 110-loss season either. Baltimore's had some really nice things happen this year. They've got some really nice players coming down the pike. Obviously, Rutschman's there already, getting his feet wet in the big leagues. To me, I'll be very interested with Pittsburgh to see, do they trade Brian Reynolds? We've been hearing about him as a trade candidate seemingly for 2 years. They don't seem to want to trade him, but there is some cost control there in that they bought out a couple of arbitration years. He would be very, very attractive, and they could probably get a haul of prospects to even speed up that rebuilding process more. So I definitely think there's light at the end of the tunnel, but neither one of them are quite ready to contend just yet.
What is your take on Soto long-term at the Nationals?
I think they have to sign him if for no other reason that if you're trying to sell that team and his status is in limbo, that hurts the value of the team. If you can go to a potential buyer and say, look, we have this guy, he's one of the 3 best players in baseball, and he's yours for the next 10 years or whatever it's going to be, that's got to be attractive to a potential buyer. So, they've traded away a lot of their guys. We saw them get rid of Scherzer and Turner last year. Rendon left, Harper left. But I think Soto is the guy who can carry this franchise into the rest of this decade and beyond. And I just think at some point they have to do what's necessary. Now, that's going to be a $500 million contract, most likely, because Scott Boras is not taking any sort of a discount on a guy who's this close to free agency. But it would be a shame to see Soto not in a Nationals uniform, given what he's meant to that club.
Yeah, if he wants to stay, I think the Nationals could make it happen. I just get the funny feeling he'd rather go somewhere else. We'll have to wait and see on that. What's the cure, if there is one, for the Angels?
More pitching, and maybe a third baseman. It's a shame watching Ohtani and Trout have this season. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about what a breath of fresh air it was to see them contending. They obviously have hit a bad skid here, but they are still within reach of a playoff spot. And I think their front office is going to try to make some moves to keep them in that contention. This extra playoff spot this year opens the door. As of this morning, 23 teams in the big leagues are either in a playoff spot or within 8 games with about 70 plus games left to play. So, I think the Angels understand that this window with Trout and Ohtani is not going to be here forever, and they're going to go out and try to make some moves to grab one of those wild card spots.
Boy, I tell you though, Mark, they're 37-45, and Tampa's 45-37. I don't know where they're going to make the games up. I mean, there's 6 teams that's going to get in: Minnesota, Houston, or the American League Central winner, and then the 4 teams in the American League East who are all way over 500. I don't know. The Angels actually think they can make the playoffs with this horrendous. They're 11.
Well, I don't know if they think they can.
Games.
I'm not sure if they think they can, but I think you look at it, the American League East teams are going to play each other a lot. So that's going to be a little bit of a bloodbath in that division. A lot of teams playing each other. The Orioles, as we just discussed, are not an easy out. So the schedules for those teams down the stretch are going to be a little more difficult. The Angels are going to have a lot of games against, winnable games against teams like Texas, like Seattle, like Oakland. Those are, Seattle and Texas are not easy outs either, but they're also not powerhouses. So, the Angels, I think, have looked at this and said, we've had no playoff games in this franchise in 2015, despite the fact that we have 2 of the best players in the game. We owe it to them and to our fan base to at least try.
Are you still under the belief, as most of us are, that at the end of the day, Aaron Judge is going to play his whole career with the Yankees?
I am. I think when you look at the history of the Yankees, they have not lost a player to free agency, one of their own players to free agency, that they wanted back, like truly wanted back. I can't even remember who the last one was, right? I mean, think about Bernie Williams, almost signs with the Red Sox. George Steinbrenner steps in last minute and brings him back. They always re-signed Jeter, Posada, Rivera, Pettit, all of their homegrown guys who were free agents. They always brought back. Cano is the one you can point to. I'm not sold they really wanted Cano at the price he was looking at. Aaron Judge means so much to that franchise on and off the field. He's going to cost more than the Yankees were offering at the beginning of the season, assuming he stays healthy in the second half. But I think it's worth it for them, and I think they believe that too.
I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, Mark, great job. Thanks for some help here going around the sport. Appreciate the few minutes. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you coming on.